there, my name is Megan and welcome to my channel, or welcome back. In honor of Valentine's Day coming up, I'm going to be recommending 10 romance books for y'all. Now, these are different book recommendations depending on the type of romantic mood you are in. I have some contemporary romance, I have some romantasy, and I'm going to be going through these books by spice level. So I have some books that are tame with no spice, all the way up to books that are very spicy. So hopefully you guys will be able to find a book to suit your mood that includes a lot of good romance. But before we go ahead and get on into the recommendations, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button, as well as giving this video a like to throw my channel a little bit of support. Also, I am the author of the science fiction book Aftermath, which has a 4.7 rating on Amazon and is available via Kindle or paperback on there. So if that sounds like a genre you would be interested in reading, I would love for you to check it out. Lastly, if I do have reviews for any of the books discussed in this video, I will link them up in the cards as well as the description box below. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get on into the romance book recommendations. And I'm going to be starting off with books that are very tame and have no spice. The first book is Bingsu for Two by Sujin Witherspoon. This is a YA contemporary book that was just released earlier this year. In this book, we are following a main character named River, and he is just trying to find himself. And at the beginning of the book, he quits his job, stops working for his family, like coffee company, ends up dumping his girlfriend and walking out of the SATs. He ends up walking into a competitor coffee shop, which is like a locally owned family coffee shop, and asks for a job. And there is a girl that works there, the daughter of the owner, who absolutely loathes him. And the two of them have a lot of animosity, but are forced to work together. One day, River accidentally uploads a video of his coworkers acting silly on the job, and the video goes viral. And everybody starts shipping River and Sarong, the girl who hates him. So the two of them have to act like they like each other, act like they are dating in order to appease their new social media audience. But they start developing feelings for one another and have to overcome their preconceived notions as well as their outright dislike of each other. As for the romance, it is an enemies to lovers type romance, so that is a trope that you really like. This would fit. I wasn't a fan of Sarong at first because she is a bit unlikable and I don't really understand why she was so mean to River. But as the story progresses, we do see her layers shed and understand her as a person. And like I said, it does have a really sweet, cute romance. Next, we have the Winners Trilogy by Marie Rukatsky. This is a YA fantasy. However, there is absolutely zero magic, zero mythical creatures in this book. The only thing fantastical about it is that it is a made-up world. That is it. So if you are someone that doesn't like fantasy but likes good romances, then I think this book would still work for you. The story is set in a world where a brutal empire has taken over these smaller countries, and we are following Kestrel, who is the daughter of a big general in this conquering empire, and the people who lived in the kingdoms that have been taken over have been forced into slavery. So Kestrel is part of the ruling class, and one day she goes out and sees a slave up for purchase named Aaron, and she decides to purchase Aaron. And what she doesn't know about Aaron is that he is actually part of a resistance movement, or kind of leading this resistance movement to help overthrow this conquering empire and its rulers. Because of Kestrel's high position in society and being the daughter of a general, her interactions with Aaron should be very limited, but immediately the two of them have a connection and start trying to see each other and spend time with one another. And not only that, but now Aaron, who absolutely hates Kestrel and her people, realizes that he is developing feelings for one of them. And the reason that I like this book so much is because of the forbidden romance. You have a girl that should not even have anything to do with a slave falling in love with a slave, and you have a slave who has way more to him than meets the eye. And then the angst in this series is so well done, especially in book 2, because Kestrel is placed in a situation where she could help Aaron, she could help his people by potentially marrying someone else and coming into a position of authority. But obviously that presents its own problems, especially for Aaron, who is utterly in love with her. So this book is just very, very emotional and heartbreaking, and the chemistry between the two characters was so well written, and I just feel like the series is very much underrated. So if you're someone that likes slow burn, forbidden romances, no spice, then I definitely recommend the series. Next, I have three book recommendations that are low on the spice level but still have really good romances. The first one is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. This is a dark fantasy with folktale-like elements, and it is a standalone. The story takes place in a small village that's very isolated, and it's located next to the wood. The wood is this corrupted, malevolent forest that is slowly encroaching on the village. The only person who can keep this malevolent forest at bay is a wizard known as the Dragon, and as compensation, the village must give up one girl every 10 years to the dragon to do with as he pleases. The main character in this book is Agnieszka, and she is chosen as the next girl to be given to the dragon, but most girls are chosen for their beauty and grace, and Agnieszka has none of that. She is the complete opposite, but he picks her because she seems to have some sort of connection to the magic of this world. When Agnieszka leaves to go live with the dragon, he reluctantly starts to teach her how to use her magic, and it is very hard on her. She does have a tough time of it. And Agnieszka realizes that the dragon is not the only one who can keep this forest at bay. In fact, he needs her help. This does have a good romantic element because the dragon is not a likable character. Like, he is very rough around the edges, and Agnieszka is just clumsy and awkward, but somehow the two of them together just work. And it is definitely is a, I don't want to say hate to love, but like strong dislike to love romance, as the dragon, he kind of has to soften towards Agnieszka, and Agnieszka has to soften towards him. But this book is definitely more plot focused than romance focused, but this does have a couple of semi-spicy scenes in it, and it's definitely one of my favorite standalone fantasies. Next, we have The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith. This is a YA book, and it is the first book in a new series. However, the characters in this book are like 18 and 19 years old, so I would recommend it for your upper YA readers because it does have some spice in it. In this book, we are following an alternative London that is actually ruled by a fairy queen, and her son, Brom, who is a fairy, is deciding to take a wife. So the queen opens up this competition for these girls of the upper class to compete for Brom's hand. And we're following Ivy. Her only reason for entering this competition was to save her family because they are shunned and disgraced because of something that her sister did. But once she enters the competition, she meets Brom's brother, who is a human because he is the son of the queen's human consort. And the two of them start to develop feelings for one another. So we have a love triangle somewhat in this book. It's a light love triangle because Ivy loves or is falling in love with Emmett, not so much Brom, but Brom is expressing feelings of love towards Ivy. And then we have a forbidden romance because obviously you cannot be in love with the prince's brother when you are trying to marry the prince himself. There are a few non-graphic sex scenes in this book between two of the characters, and it definitely just solidified this as a good romantasy, but more on the low spice side. Next, we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. In Addie LaRue, we are following Addie, and she is living in the 18th century, and in order to escape an arranged marriage of sorts, Addie makes a deal with a demon or the devil. She wants to be free and live forever, and the devil grants her this wish, but there's one condition: no one will ever remember who she is. So this book follows Addie as she is living through the subsequent centuries lonely because no one remembers her. She is unable to build relationships with people because literally 10 minutes after meeting her, they have no clue who she is. Until one day, Addie meets a guy named Henry who has made his own bargain with the devil and is able to remember who Addie is. Longing for human connection, Addie and Henry enter into a relationship and kind of try to work around the two bargains that they made with the devil. This book is kind of interesting because we have situations where Addie in the past has been trying to have romantic interactions with different men, and we see how that works out due to her curse. But then when she meets Henry, we spend a lot of time in the story as the two of them are falling in love and kind of what Henry's curse is and how that's going to affect their relationship. But then one other thing is there's also this romantic tension between Addie and the devil that she made this deal with, because the two of them are immortal and they have known each other for centuries now, and at times he is the only person that Addie has had any interaction with, so they have this connection that nothing else can even begin to compare to. And there are some instances where Addie absolutely hates the devil for what he did to her, but she's like oddly attracted to him and has these feelings towards him. So it's a very conflicting book with a lot of different romantic elements, some sweet, some questionable, and there is some good spice in this book as well, but it's definitely not overwhelming. Next, we have Well Met by Jen DeLuca. This is a contemporary romance set against the backdrop of a Renaissance fair. We are following a young woman named Emily who recently moved to this small town to take care of her sister and her 2 kids because her sister got into an accident, and Emily needs a job, so she ends up getting a job at the local Renaissance fair. Working at the fair, Emily meets a guy named Simon who's playing the role of a captain, and he is grumpy. He is known to be a bit stern and just really rough around the edges. And at first, Emily and Simon clash in everything that they do, but the more that they interact with each other, the more that they soften towards one another, and their initial antagonistic clashes turn flirtatious and eventually romantic. Well Met is a lighthearted, fun contemporary romance, and it is slow burn, and we do have that initial dislike to love type trope. And if you are someone who really likes the Renaissance fair, like I personally do, I've been several times, then this will definitely speak to you. And there is a couple of, or at least from what I remember, there is one good spicy scene in this book, but there might be more. Moving on into the books that are very spicy, I have 4 recommendations here, and the first one I'm going to be recommending is Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. This is the first book in a series known as Wicked Games, but I'm pretty sure that the second book is a companion because the main conflict in this book was wrapped up. In this book, we're following Ophelia and her sister Genevieve, and one day they wake up and find that her mother unfortunately has passed away. And Ophelia does have these necromantic type magical abilities while her sister does not. And one day her sister goes missing, and Ophelia traces her steps back to this game known as Phantasma. It's this traveling magical game, and anyone who enters, if they win, have the chance to be granted a single wish as the reward. And what our main character wants to do is compete, and her single wish will be to find her sister Genevieve. The games are set in this big manor where the characters have to go live, and it is haunted. There are these different types of magical beings. Think of like demons and ghouls and all of these things that attack these characters. And there are specific trials that these characters have to get through that are bloody and gruesome and violent. And Ophelia ends up enlisting the help of a ghost who has something to do with these games. However, this ghost is like more corporeal than you would think as a ghost, and there's definitely more to his story than meets the eye. And the two of them are very much attracted to each other, and a physical relationship ensues, as well as a questionable romance, as he is helping Ophelia win these trials and find her sister. But there are a lot of good scenes where there's angst and the characters have to work together and they are admiring each other's physical attractiveness. And then we have some really good scenes in this book with lots of spice, in addition to how these characters are actually starting to fall in love with each other and what conflicts that presents based on their histories, which you'll learn about. So if you are someone that likes a little bit of magic and a dark, brooding, ghostly type main character and a Mary Sue female lead, then this book might be for you. Then we have Hexed by Emily McIntyre, and I feel like any one of Emily McIntyre's books would fit well on this list because her books are just loaded with spice. We are following Vanessa in this book, and she is the niece of a crime lord who basically rules the southeastern part of the US, and she works as like a lackey for her uncle, and she ends up meeting the son of the crime boss who controls like the upper northeast New York area of the US. And she finds out that he is engaged to her cousin Aria. Now, Vanessa and Aria have never had a good relationship with her. Aria has always treated Vanessa like crap, And unfortunately, Enzo, Aria's fiance, and Vanessa start to develop feelings for one another, even though Enzo is engaged to Aria. Emily McIntyre knows how to write spice. My goodness, it doesn't matter what type of situation these characters are in. She knows how to write the want so good. And then the way that she describes things is very in your face, but it's not to the point where you're like taken aback by it. This is definitely a slow burn romance, and it's one of those books where the guy would like kill anybody who touches or hurts the girl, and he's overly protective, but at the same time he does allow her her own autonomy and independence. If you are someone that likes romances that include any type of mafia or crime bosses type trope, definitely pick this book up, and also a very much forbidden romance. Next, we have Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. This is another standalone contemporary, and we are following an age gap romance and also another forbidden romance. In this book, we're following 19-year-old Jordan, who goes to live with her boyfriend at her boyfriend's father's house because her boyfriend is stupid and they didn't have any money to pay their rent. And when Jordan moves in and starts living with Pike, the two of them realize that they are very much attracted to one another. But obviously, because Jordan is dating Pike's son, he can't act on that. There are just so many things about this book that I liked. So first off, this is definitely slow burn, and it takes a long time for the characters to act on their feelings, but it is a dual perspective. So we are in the head of Pike and we are in the head of Jordan as they are grappling with these feelings and exactly how they should handle them. And it's very conflicting. It's very real and it's very human. And then we have the consequences of being in a relationship with someone who is like almost 20 years your senior, at least from the guy's point of view. Like, how would you be judged? What would people say about you, etc. And then we have the whole situation of her having dated, Pike's son, and I'm going to spoil a little bit here, but they don't continue dating. So there is like no cheating type going on in this, but we do have like, okay, you dated my son and now you're dating me, and maybe some weirdness that might go on with that. So Penelope Douglas took a lot of potentially taboo, very conflicting situations in this book and wrote them to a way that was very real, raw, and emotional, and will pull at your heart going through what these characters are going through. And the spice in this book is top notch. It is very much a big part of the plot. There are several scenes where these characters are physical, or at least thinking about being physical with each other, and it is graphic, and she does not shy away from that, but it is very much balanced with the plot of the book and these characters and how they grow. And lastly, we have the Transformation Trilogy by Cassie Alexander. This is a, I believe, self-published series, and it is a Beauty and the Beast type retelling, but there are some differences. Mainly, we're following a princess named Lizanne, and she is kept like inside under lock and key her whole life for her protection. And she is actually given up by her father to this beast, who's actually a sorcerer. And there are these beings that are coming up from under the earth and attacking their lands. And the king gives Lizanne to the beast so that he will help to combat these evil zombie-like beings, because the king thinks that the beast will use Lizanne however he wants, that kind of thing. But the beast actually doesn't want to do that. And what he finds is that Lizanne has potential magical ability, and he agrees to start teaching her, although he's very reluctant. So think about any type of like beast character in any Beauty and the Beast rendition. He is always very grumpy, probably a bit mean at first and cruel, and that does carry heavily into these books. He is not a likable character at first. And Lizanne's power is actually contingent on pain. She's basically unable to summon it, control it, unless she's experiencing pain. So put that together however you want in a romance book, but we do have two characters that are physically attracted to one another, highly physically attracted to one another, and a character who needs to experience pain in order to summon her magic and learn how to control it. So there is definitely explicit content in this book that involves pain, which might be a little bit off-putting to some people, but in my personal opinion, I haven't read, I don't think, any other books like that, so I really can't compare it. But it wasn't off-putting to me, and I feel like it could be. Lizanne is much younger than our beast character. He is a sorcerer who's been alive for a long time, almost immortal. So we do have that like innocent girl, kind of older experienced male, if you're someone who likes that trope. We do have the teacher and student trope, and then we have the pain and pleasure trope. All three of these books do include some sort of spice. However, the next two books in the series include way more than the first book, as this is more about introduction into the plot, the world, the conflict, and as the two characters are getting to know one another. But there is a lot of angst in these books, especially book one, which is an excellent setup. Okay, you guys, those are 10 romance book recommendations for any type of romantic mood that you are in to get us ready for Valentine's Day coming up. So let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them, or if you have any good recommendations of romance books, whether they are contemporary, romantasy, spicy, tame, a little bit in between. Let me know in the comments because I'm always looking for a new good romance read. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in another video soon. Goodbye.